This is part two in a four-part series on how to build an authentic pizza oven. Last time I left off with the stand with these dimensions, and I mentioned that there's a base of concrete here for a building to sit on so we can use it year round. The first thing we want to talk about is fire brick. Fire brick that you want to use a medium duty fire brick. You don't want to use the light duty or the low duty because although they're the ones that are easy to find because they're used in fireplaces, they will eventually break down and crumble. The high duty fire brick, which is probably unusual to find anyway, are not appropriate either because they transfer, their heat transfer is different and it's inappropriate for pizza. So you take your standard fire brick of 9 inches by 4.5 inches by 2.25 inches. And there's a light duty one here, is red in red. The light duties come in red and yellow, and the medium duties only come in yellow. They also come in arched shapes and in splits, which is shown in G. And here's a typical regular clay brick in H, shows you how much smaller it is. The arched bricks are a little more expensive, and you can actually get computerized systems to design an arch or a whole dome based on these formed arch bricks on a certain schedule, but it's fairly expensive. I've seen these types of situations done on the web. I, on the other hand, just bought the the B here, the medium duty full size brick, and I cut them in half. Before you use them, you want to soak them for about a half a minute so that they don't suck up the water out of the mortar too fast. And that's pretty much it for the fire brick. You'll have to find your local distributor, which it might not be that easy. You might track down some of the people that do pottery or use kilns in their professions and find out where they got theirs from. I cut my fire brick with a masonry saw with a standard stationary blade and a sled that moves so that the brick stays fairly stable. I'm here sawing a brick at an angle, and I'm holding the brick up just with another brick cut at an angle, and it cuts fairly well and fairly accurately. So it's a pretty standard procedure. Just don't plow through too fast. If you see sparks, you know you're going too fast because that's the blade coming off. Just so set aside some of your best bricks that have no chips or edgy problems with them, and lay them out in your herringbone pattern. I used a 42-inch interior dome size. So if you plan on having half brick on the outside first course, that's 4.5 inches on either side. So you have 4.5 inches here, 4.5 inches there. That's 9 inches plus the 42 gives you a 51-inch outer diameter. The entryway is 22 inches, and with brick laid lengthwise here and here, you're going to have another 9 inches on the outer dimension of the width of the entrance. So you lay your brick on your insulated hearth with fire clay mixed with a little water, and do it on a cool day or a not so sunny day so that the fire clay doesn't set up so fast and make it difficult to set your herringbone pattern in. But as you go along fairly well, you can use a rubber hammer to tap them in place. I didn't bother because it sets so nice anyway. The first course that I used was a common design. You'll see on the web is half brick for the first course all the way around, and then you start your incline from there to make your dome. So the first thing you're going to run into is like what mortar to use. One thing you don't want to use is any type of Portland cement because it'll break down under the repeated heatings. So there's 3 that I tested for this project here to understand exactly what the limitations were. The Forno Bravo Custom Mix was performed really well. It was very coarse grained. It was kind of strange to use, but it worked really well. It was very dark. You'll see in the dome later on. The Heat Stop 50, which on the East Coast is easy to get and much cheaper because Forno Bravo is on the West Coast. So this performed really well also, and it hardened really well too. So it was turned out to be my preferred mortar because of the cost and its performance. And Alcy, which was my least preferable, although it seemed to set up, it never fully hardened, and it didn't seem to be appropriate for a pizza oven. So in the future, I would not use this. I would use the Heat Stop 50, at least on the East Coast. So when you start using your brick, you soak them, and you'll find this efflorescence shown in the arrows, and the efflorescence is just minerals exuding out of the brick or the mortar, and it happens under certain environmental conditions. Nothing to worry about. It forms a kind of like a fine dust coating on the outside, and it'll suck up your mortar if you put your mortar fresh down there. So you want to brush that off and then re-wet your brick. Here I'm using also a radius tool. These types of tools are used in a lot of cases where you're making something round. In this case, since I have an angle to set the brick at also, I have the stick running by, not only with a distance set here, with this little piece of plywood, gives me my 21-inch constant radius to the face of the brick, but it also gives me the stick running by, gives me the angle at which to set the brick. So here is that in a better, more close-up picture. And I also use these little wedges of fire brick. So I use less mortar, and generally speaking, the less mortar you use, the better. When you finally get up about 3 or 4 courses, you're intersecting the area where the entrance is, and you're going to probably want to start working on your entrance arch. I was fiddling with different types of cuts here, and I ended up using, I think, just regular full-size brick, not even cut. When you set your form in here, you'll notice the form here is on these 2 little wooden pillars, and you can't see, but there's tiny little wedges in here. There's shims, so that when the mortar is set and you're ready to pull the form out, you just pull the wedges out or the little shims out, pull these little blocks out, and then your form drops and you can pull it out. That way you avoid wrecking your hard work, because you're yanking on the form to get it out. Your form should be easily removed from its place. From the inside, you see how complex this actually gets. The one thing to remember is that a dome is essentially a 3-dimensional arch. So it depends on just the proper laying of the brick on top of each other to force the thing under compression to stay in place. So if you make your cuts carefully and you come around, you'll go through this arch, and when you finally get up to this next course here, when you're high enough, you'll start seeing it all coming together. It's not so easy to actually get the complex angles. So what my wife is doing here in the upper right, she's making a styrofoam block that is the same size of a half-cut brick or a full-cut brick, and then we make a pattern out of that and then cut that. Then the outside form here, same as the inside form. I'm using light-duty brick here because they don't get that hot, and I wanted to use the red brick, and so the red only come in the low duty. So I'm setting my form here again, and I'm cutting this little complex little groove here in the brick to set the first arch brick in, so that the force is downward and not trying to push out on the pillar. You'll see later on that the pillars get enlarged because these pillars wouldn't be large enough to support the arch. So as you make your way up the dome, you see now I've gone from the light gray mortar to this darker Forno Bravo mortar, and it's much more gritty. It's set up really well, though. You can see, though, that when you get up high, the brick are actually starting to almost assume a vertical position. They want to really fall out, so you'll have to have multiple sticks to hold them. And at a certain point, you'll find out that unless you're an alien, you have 12 arms, or you have 3 other people that want to stand around and just hold brick till they're dry. What you have to do is you have to resort to some sort of form. And what we did is we got an exercise ball, and I put a strap around the middle of the ball, so when the bricks sat on the ball, they wouldn't push down on the ball so much. When I finally got to the very top here, I put my last few bricks in, and the dome was done. Then I've gone back to the front arch, and I've made pillars on either side of the arch because the force of the arch, I'm going to put a lot of weight on here eventually, and the force pushes down on the top of the arch and tries to push the arch out because everything's under compression. So you need pillars on either side that are hefty enough to resist the outward force of the outside part of the arch. I also relieve some of the stress on the arch by putting a bluestone cap, and this is also to support and give me a nice flat surface for my chimney. Shown here, I'm going to show you here how I set the bluestone. I put spaces on the top course of brick. I've already cut my hole, half hole here for my flange here for the pipe. I'm cutting it with my handy tool here. This tool is a really handy tool to have. They only cost about $150. You buy a little diamond blade. Always use water and always use glasses. You do not want to get any of this stuff in your eyes. You should use glasses whenever you're cutting anything in masonry. So I've made little reference lines here in red. I've laid my bed of mortar. I'm going to flip this back over. And now I've got my first bluestone in place, and I'm making sure my arches, my hole is set in the proper place, and I'm putting my flange on to set my next piece of bluestone. You can see my opening to the my exit out of the stove is pretty hefty size there, and it narrows, of course, because just of the entrance into the hole of the chimney. I'm setting now, I wet my bluestone first, put down a bed of mortar, put down the flange, and then I rest the pipe on top of the flange. This just compresses the mortar, and I use no anchor bolts whatsoever. This allows me to not have to drill any holes. You don't need them, and you'll see in the next slide that there's a bracket holding the pipe up, so it's not going anywhere. The last thing I end up doing is I have a flange kit that sets a aluminum boot at a slight angle, so the front of this chimney enclosure is a little taller than the rear, and everything is screwed down and caulked tightly so there's no leaks. When I fired this the first time, absolutely, I was very pleased because absolutely no smoke came out the front whatsoever. It drafts really, really well, so I'm very pleased with its performance right now. So the last thing I'm left to do with it at this point is take my bluestone and surround the dome with a whole course of bluestone all the way around. And this will give me a nice base to put tools on or rest pizzas and so forth. In the next video, you'll see where we go and we actually cover the dome with 3 inches of ceramic blanket, and then use apply cast refractory lightweight cement to cover the ceramic blanket, and that'll bring it out from the base here to about 3.5 inches to out here, so this nasty area in here is not visible. And that's about it. The next part, you'll see us insulate with the ceramic blanket, cover it with a refractory lightweight cement, and then stucco it. And we're almost done then. Enjoy it. Thank you very much. The tin pan bended and the story ended.